The Bible story Read Aloud for Kids and Adults Part 3. On Jacob's way to Haran, he rested in a certain place to sleep. As he slept, he had a dream. In his dream, he saw a ladder that reached all the way to heaven. The angels of God were going up and down the ladder. Above the ladder, God spoke to him and told him that he will give that land to him and his family, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed continually because of him. When Jacob reached Haran, he stayed with Rebekah's brother, Laban. Laban told Jacob that he must work for him in his field. Jacob agreed to do so, but he told Laban, instead of paying him with money, he'd rather marry Laban's daughter Rachel. Jacob fell in love with Rachel at first sight. Laban agreed to have Jacob work for him for 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. God had blessed Jacob's work tremendously. Laban was very pleased to have him work for him. Jacob had multiplied Laban's wealth. After working for 7 years, Jacob went to Laban and told him that he was ready to marry Rachel. However, Laban was afraid of Jacob leaving him. He therefore tricked Jacob. He agreed to Jacob marrying Rachel. However, on the wedding night, he snuck Rachel's older sister Leah into Jacob's bed. Jacob accepted Leah as his wife that night, without realizing that she was not Rachel. He was therefore tricked into marrying Leah instead. Jacob was very upset and confronted Laban. Laban therefore agreed to give Rachel to Jacob 1 week later after he married Leah, if Jacob agreed to work for him for another 7 years. Jacob loved Rachel so much that he agreed. Therefore, in the 7th year of being in Haran, Jacob was given 2 wives, and he worked for Laban for 14 years total as the agreement. But even though he had 2 wives, Jacob loved Rachel more than he loved Leah, and Leah was sad because of this. God saw that Leah was sad because Rachel was loved more. God therefore blessed Leah to have many children. Leah's children were named Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Shortly after, Leah gave her maid Zilpah to have children with Jacob. Zilpah's children were named Gad and Asher. Shortly after, Leah had 3 more children for Jacob: Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. At first, Rachel was unable to have children, but God blessed her to have children after a long time. Her children were named Joseph and Benjamin. However, before having her sons, Rachel had her maid Bilhah have 2 children for Jacob, and their names were Dan and Naphtali. Therefore, Jacob now had 12 sons in all. While staying with Laban, God blessed Jacob greatly with many cattle for himself. Laban was secretly jealous of Jacob and did not treat him well all the time. Laban did many tricky things to Jacob and did not pay him properly. Therefore, one night, Jacob secretly left Laban's house with his whole family, cattle, and herdsmen. As Jacob continued on his journey, one evening while he was alone, he found himself wrestling with an unknown man. He wrestled with the man until the morning. The man told Jacob to let him go, but he would not. This man was actually a God-sent angel, and Jacob did not know. Surprisingly, Jacob won the fight. The angel therefore told him, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because he fought with an angel and won." However, although he won the fight injured his thigh permanently. Jacob continued on his journey back home and arrived safely. Although he was afraid of seeing his brother Esau, he eventually learned that Esau was no longer angry with him for stealing his birthright. Esau was actually happy to see him and his new family. Jacob and his family therefore settled in Shalem, in the land of Canaan. In Canaan, Jacob's sons became known for serious trouble and mischief. The other communities nearby became afraid of them. Soon after also, Esau took his family and moved away from them because the land was unable to support his possessions and his brother's possessions together. Esau settled in Mount Seir, and his descendants were called the Edomites. Of all his sons, Jacob loved Joseph the most. He made Joseph a beautiful coat of many colors to show him that he was special to him. Joseph's brothers were therefore jealous of him because they knew he was their father's favorite. One night, Joseph dreamed that his brothers and himself were binding sheaves in the field. Joseph's sheaves stood tall, while his brothers' sheaves stood around his and worshipped his sheaf. He told his family about his dream, but his brothers were mad because they felt that Joseph was telling them that one day he would have power over them. Joseph had another dream. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars worshipped him. When he told this to his family, his brothers hated him even more and now decided to harm him. They stripped him of his colorful coat and threw him into a deep pit. They then sold Joseph to merchants. The merchants took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, king, to be a slave. That day his brothers went home and lied to their father, telling him that Joseph was attacked and eaten by a beast in the field. Israel was devastated and mourned Joseph's death. Although Joseph was taken to Egypt, God was with him. When Potiphar saw that Joseph was special and gifted, he respected him and put him in charge of everything. Potiphar's wife was secretly in love with Joseph, and she wanted to be with him. This therefore brought trouble into Joseph's life. Joseph refused to be with Potiphar's wife. Because he rejected her, she lied and told Potiphar that Joseph tried to hurt her. Potiphar became upset and put Joseph into prison. But even in prison, God was with Joseph. The prison guards were impressed with him and put him in charge of all the other prisoners. In prison, Joseph met 2 men. One of the men was Potiphar's chief baker, and the other was Potiphar's chief butler. The 2 men both had strange dreams. They shared their dreams with Joseph, and he told them what their dreams meant. For the butler, he would be restored to his office, but the baker would be hanged. These things actually occurred as Joseph told them, and it became known to men that Joseph was an interpreter of dreams. Joseph was now in prison for 2 years. At this time, Potiphar himself had a dream. The butler, who was once in prison, told Potiphar about Joseph's gift, and Joseph was brought before Potiphar to figure out the dream. Joseph heard and explained Potiphar's dream. The dream meant that Egypt would experience 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. He told Potiphar what he should do to prepare for the 7 years of famine, and Potiphar appreciated Joseph's wisdom. Potiphar therefore changed Joseph's name to Zaphat-Paneah, gave Joseph a wife, and made Joseph ruler over all the land of Egypt. In the next 7 years, the earth brought forth much crops, and Joseph stored up the excess food. 7 years later, famine came upon the whole earth, and Egypt was the only country that had food. People came from different countries to buy food from Joseph because he had storehouses full. Israel heard about the food and sent his sons to buy some. When they arrived, Joseph was present, and he recognized who they were. They did not recognize him. He also remembered the evil they did to him. So he left from before them and cried to himself. He even played a few tricks on his brothers to pay them back for what they did to him. But shortly after, he revealed himself to them and decided to help them. Joseph forgave them, provided them with food for the entire family, and told his brothers to bring the rest of the family to Egypt to live with him. Therefore, all of Israel's sons, their wives, their children, their cattle, and all of their possessions came to Egypt. In Egypt, Israel and his family lived in a town called Goshen, where they multiplied greatly. Each of Israel's 12 sons had enormous families, which created one nation of 12 tribes, also referred to as the 12 tribes of Israel. Before Israel died, he spoke what God would have him to say to each son. Some were blessings and some weren't. The blessings he spoke into Joseph were powerful. However, Judah received a great blessing as well, which many years later we would come to know that Jesus was a descendant from the tribe of Judah.